Welcome to the Andy Social Podcast. My name is Andy Dowling, bass player for the heavy metal band Lord, host of the Andy Social Podcast. Oh, funnily enough, that's me talking right now, and host of the new podcast that will hopefully be released at the time of this episode going out, called Self-Starter. Self-Starter, if you go to selfstarter.com.au or you search for Self-Starter on your podcast app, then hopefully you'll find it. You can also search on Facebook. And if it's not out already, it will be in the next couple of weeks. But Self-Starter, in a nutshell, is going to be about small business, self-employment and freelancing. It's going to cater for three main segments of people. It'll be people that are in a job that they don't like. They've got a lot of ideas and some dreams about doing something for themselves, but have just been too scared to take those first few steps. I really want to give people reassurance that that they can do something on the side. They don't have to quit their job and throw everything up in the air. They can start small and work their way up. The second segment of people is the people that have a concept and they have an idea and they've started to take those first few steps and they're getting closer to launch. They're getting closer to opening their doors for trade. And there's a lot of concerns around that, a lot of apprehension, a lot of fears around that side of it. So giving some reassurance and some tools and tactics for those people as well that are on the verge of opening their doors. And then the third segment of people is going to be those that have been in self-employment, have had their small business up and running for several weeks, months and years and decades. And I want that segment of people to really get some great value from this podcast where they can learn and share best practices, find out what other people are doing. The markets are changing so often, so it's really valuable to learn what other people are doing. And this podcast is going to cover a whole range of different industries, different backgrounds, different professions, different services, different products. And what I'm hoping is that people will be able to share best practices that transcend across industries. So we're not so insular in our way of thinking and thinking that the old tried and true method is the only way of approaching business. And this is going to be a really exciting podcast for me. It is going to be an education tool for myself because I'm going to be learning as I go because I'm starting to really sort of get immersed in self-employment. And I'm really hoping that a lot of other people get value from that as well. So if it's not out already, it will be out shortly. Selfstarter.com.au or search for Self-Starter on Facebook or on your podcast app. And hopefully you'll be able to find that. Oh, spammy spam. So much spam. Okay, guys. So this week's episode, thank you so much for sticking around so far. This week's guest is with Joel Orford. Now, Joel is the guitarist and violinist in the, I was going to say Brisbane. Well, they are Brisbane-based, but Australian metal band Lagerstein. Now, if you haven't heard of Lagerstein, I really encourage you guys to pause this podcast now. Go over to andysocial.net, check out the show notes because I'm going to put a couple of video clips in there because I really want you guys to understand and get some context about who this band is and what they are and what they're all about. And then listen to this episode because I think you'll really appreciate the conversation and the content in this episode, knowing what this band's all about. So go over to andysocial.net, go to the show notes for this episode, and you'll be able to just really get a clear understanding of who Lagerstein are and what they're all about. But Lagerstein are about to go on an Australian tour. So if you're listening to this episode the week that it comes out, Lagerstein are going around the country between December 2nd and December 10th. So the 2nd in Brisbane, the 6th in Canberra, the 8th in Sydney, the 9th in Melbourne, and the 10th in Melbourne as well, which will be an acoustic show. So the venues are Woolly Mammoth, The Basement, Factory Floor, Yas, and Cherry Bar. So if you're in those relevant cities, then you'll know those venues and which ones they apply to. I'm fantastic at plugging things, as you can tell. So go over to the Lagerstein Facebook page or Lagerstein website, and all the dates will be there and how to either buy tickets or details of how to get to those shows. But if you want to make it easy for yourself, go to andysocial.net and click on the show notes for this episode, and I'll have all the links there for you as well. So this episode was really, really interesting for me. I came in with a particular tactic and we didn't quite go in that direction. But ultimately, the most interesting thing that's happening in the world of Lagerstein is that they've just returned from seven or 8 months in Europe. They didn't go over there just to do a single tour. They decided to physically relocate the whole band and base themselves out of Hungary and do a series of tours over several months. And I really wanted to dig into a lot of how the hell were they able to coordinate this? I mean, this is, from a musician point of view, I was really intrigued to find out a little bit more of, I guess, the mechanics and the understanding of how they were able to make this happen. Now, we touched on a little bit of that, but we went off in a completely different direction, and we really started talking about some deep topics and some really interesting insights from Joel's point of view. And I won't dig into it too much. I'll let the conversation in the episode paint the picture, but this was really, really fun. Wasn't expected whatsoever, but I really got a lot out of this episode. Now, before we kick into it very quickly, this was recorded over Skype because Joel was still in Switzerland. He was spending a few extra weeks there. He was timing his return to coincide with a Manowar show in Europe before he headed back. So good on him. And we did this over Skype, as mentioned, and there's a little bit of a delay in this. So if anybody's used Skype before, you understand that it can be a little bit clunky at times. Preferably for me, I always prefer WhatsApp, and I'm not terribly confident with Skype, and you'll probably notice this at times through this conversation. There's these little awkward pauses, and sometimes we both attempt to talk at the same time, and there's one point where my phone absolutely shits itself and I'm trying to scramble to work out what the hell's going on while trying to ask a question, and I reckon you guys will be able to pick out which point that is. So anyway, regardless of that, this is a really, really cool conversation. I hope you get a lot out of it. And please, if you haven't heard of Lagerstein, go over to andysocial.net, check out the videos, just watch a little bit of the videos just to get an understanding of what they look like, what they sound like, and what they're all about, and then listen to the conversation with Joel. I think you'll really, really appreciate it. So enough of me. As always, please enjoy this episode with Joel Orford of Lagerstein.
Ahoy, Andy. How's it going?
Very good. Yourself?
I'm well. You can hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. And do you just want to talk again?
Hello.
Oh,
Mama
yes. Jumps here. Awesome. Oh, man.
Fantastic.
So, you're in Switzerland.
Yes, I am. I'm hanging out in Stans, which is near Lucerne, if you know Lucerne.
Oh, yeah. Like the back of my hand.
Yeah, by the back of my hand. Maybe I only know it a little bit. It's very nice here, though. It's today's actually a good day.
Yeah.
It's blue sky. It's been freaking freezing here.
Ooh,
but
how cold?
Stans is cool. It was like 3 degrees yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Or something. Just as the sun went down. It's not snowing yet. I'm told it will start to snow.
Oh yeah. It's getting
maybe I'll get out of here before it snows.
Well, yeah. What day do you fly out?
On the 28th of November. So I'm going off to see Manowar on the 26th, which I'm really pumped for. And because they're like my favorite band ever. And then I fly out, pretty much travel to England and fly out the day after.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, you got to get your priorities straight. You got to see Manowar before you jet back.
Yes, that's how I picked the date back when I was in Australia. Because they're on their final. I don't know if it's their final. Lots of bands say, it's our last tour. But they've said it's their last tour. They've never been to Australia, and I was like, oh, okay, if you're going to do it anytime, Joel, it's going to be now.
Yeah, good call. Good call. Get in while you can, while that opportunity is there. Otherwise, You'll be kicking yourself forever.
Yeah, I'll cry. I love Manowar.
So you get back, I guess, with all the time zones and whatnot, just bang on before your tour kicks off when you get back to Australia.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that I'm going to touch down sometime on the Thursday and then have the Friday to chill out and maybe say hello to my folks. And then tour kicks off on the Saturday. Maybe we're going to try and squeeze in a jam Saturday morning or something. So I think I'll be thoroughly dead for the after party in Brisbane.
You might have to sacrifice one after party, although over the last several months of you guys playing, I think you're probably pretty fit when it comes to your partying side of things.
Yes, I think I'll still show up and I'll do my bit. But no, because I've been thinking about this, am I going to just die when it comes to getting on stage? But I always feel like, and I'm sure you know this feeling, like when that intro track comes on and you're just about to go on stage, all your worries kind of fade away. So I'm sure that the show itself is going to be awesome.
Yeah,
even if I'm the most jet lagged person in the world.
yeah, you get that shot of adrenaline when the set starts and you suddenly go, oh, that's great. And then as soon as you walk off stage and well, actually, it's no, you get a little bit of that adrenaline for a while after it, but after a bit, it sort of all comes crashing down. It becomes this tragic event where you just start probably crying and your body breaking down. So, you know,
Yeah, definitely. Where you're half packing up your gear in the back room and you're asleep on the lounge or something, and then you wake up and everyone's left. But yeah,
nice.
but no, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, oh well, absolutely. I mean, it's I think you guys are going pretty full on as well. Like you're really sort of smashing out the shows in a small space of time. Like you're not sort of spacing it out like most Aussie bands do and go, "Oh, we'll just do it for like 6 consecutive weekends or whatnot." You guys are just sort of going hard and just getting them out of the road in a pretty quick manner.
Yeah, this tour, it's kind of different for us because maybe the last bunch of Aussie tours we've really been doing quite a lot of shows, I guess, and hitting the regional places. And this time we just decided to really focus on, well, just purely the capitals. And so, I mean, it's shorter, though I think that they're all obviously the best shows. So, or not the best, but the biggest shows. So, otherwise we would have, I think everyone needs a break, basically, if we were to come back to Australia and hit the road real hard again. The year's almost over.
Yeah, that's right. I'll try and squeeze in a few shows before the end of the year.
Yeah, basically. I mean, this is our biggest break that we ever had in Australia, like from playing, because the last shows we were in February, they ended. So I think that's something interesting for us. We've always, like, I think last year we played 7 times in Brisbane or something.
Yeah.
So it's the complete opposite idea, I guess. But I think that can build some interest for you, that you're not always there.
Well, that'll be the true test, is when you guys get back on stage in Brisbane and see whether anybody actually missed you guys or not.
Yes. I know now you're making me nervous when you say it like that.
So I want to just go back a little bit because I had Phil on this podcast late 2015, and while he was still in the band.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And he was talking about this grand idea that you guys had in the pipeline and you're working on it, of potentially relocating to Europe for a period of time and really sort of, you know, making a big crack at it and investing into it and really sort of planning ahead. And at that stage, you guys had been thinking about it for a while and it was something that you were seriously looking at. But obviously, you know, another year had passed before you guys were about to jet off and do this trip. So this has been something that's been in the making for quite a while.
Yeah, it definitely has. I think that it's almost been 3 years in the making or something, because we had originally intended to do the trip in 2016 when the album came out. But then we kind of lost a bit of momentum after the Australian tour, and we weren't quite, so much of our heart went into just getting that album released and that tour ready, that we weren't quite as prepared and ended up going this year. But definitely, I mean, it's something that we've all been talking about, that our whole lives have kind of been directed at this idea of, all right, we're working towards getting our album out and then moving ourselves to Budapest. And now I think I'm going to have a bit of an existential crisis when I come home and have to kind of think, what is it that I'm working towards now? But it's really exciting to be, because I think we've been telling everyone that we want to move to Europe and just play a lot of shows over there and live there. And I'm really excited that we're kind of at the end of that journey now, and that we did it just exactly how we had wanted to.
Well, it's just one thing that you ticked off the list now, and you can, regardless of what happens next, you can safely say that, you know, you guys had a plan, and a plan that had been sort of in your minds for several years, and, you know, a lot of people never quite get there. And this is a little bit of a segue, but, you know, there's not like 3 or 4 guys in this band. You guys have got a few people that you've got to coordinate, and from a logistics point of view, it could be a really big nightmare. And to be able to get, and I know not everyone made the trip over there, but this is a big feat for everybody to get onto the same page and have a plan and try and stick together, and to be away for that period of time as well is just incredible. So, I mean, this is a pretty massive achievement for you guys.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's interesting. People often talk about the size of the group, and I guess that having 7 people it's a logistically difficult. But then I think that the guys who are in the group, this is just their thing. Like they just love being in Lagerstein, and that there hasn't really been much strife or anything. We really are a group who move with that one mind, like one focus in mind. And that, because I mean, if I wish I could show you some pictures of the house we lived in Budapest. It was this tiny little 2-bedroom kind of holiday house attached to a bigger house. So we were living completely on top of each other, but there was because we were there with such purpose to do these shows, and to just really make an impact, that it felt like, if anything, it was a blessing to have so many people in the group, because you could kind of count on each other more, and you had a bigger team, and you were able to accomplish more than if you were just maybe overwhelmed by the gargantuan task of trying to find 100 gigs with just 3 people or 4 people or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because I know that in any band you've got a group of people that all have different strengths and weaknesses, and you sort of make sure, well, in a good band anyway, you'll focus on the people's strengths rather than pushing people to do things that they're not good at or aren't confident in. So, with a team of 7 that including yourself, did you guys have not sort of probably designated things, but did everybody have like something that they sort of looked after or contributed towards, just to make sure that I guess everybody stayed sane and nobody in particular had all the weight on their shoulders?
Yeah, I think that we, like you said, everyone has their kind of natural abilities that they drifted towards. And some people are less, because I mean, I think what I've learned about the music business is that it's a really big communication game of just getting in touch with the right people and the right bands, or not even just the right bands, but sometimes the wrong bands, and just a lot of talking. And some people excel less at that aspect of it, but we're really good at designating out jobs, even if I wouldn't necessarily say everyone has, I don't know what you call like a set title or role or something. But we always we had a whiteboard in our little living room, and we're saying, okay, well, what are we working on today? And what's our kind of calendar, and how does everything fit in, and what are you going to do today to work towards this? Or what are you working on, dude? And like a lot of even communication between the team, because especially being the kind of independent band, there's so many different areas that need addressing, I guess, and to keep on top of it. Yeah, but I think that we work really well as a team. It's like, for example, our new bassist Jamie. His job before he came to Europe with us was an independent graphic designer. So he ended up being able to jump on board and find his real niche in the group by doing all this great artwork for us. And I mean, it's not just doing the artwork, as you know, but also just all these tiny adjustments and being able to change your Facebook banner at the drop of a hat. So I think as we work more and develop as a band, people are finding their own niche of what is the best thing I can bring to this group.
It's so I mean, you mentioned this the other day, or when we were messaging each other, and you use the word that doesn't get used quite a bit when it comes to, I guess, band talk. It's the word business. And I mean, it's so refreshing, and there are a lot of people that talk about music business and whatnot, and I harp on about it, but a lot of bands still struggle to get past that stage of that romantic feeling of being in a band, and it's the artistic integrity, and it's just about the music and the love of it, and being really scared and fearful of turning it into, or looking at it as a business and moving down that path. And maybe it's the fear of the unknown and not being well versed in, those sort of things that you need to be aware of when you run your own business. But when you mentioned that, and then just the way you're talking about everybody sitting down each day and just working out who's doing what and what are we doing to push this whole thing forward, it's almost like you guys are working in an office space every day, and everyone's delegated tasks, and everybody, you know, chimes in at the beginning of the day and clocks off at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, there's two questions there, but I'll say that the idea of an office space is definitely the kind of environment that we want to create. Though when you say office space, maybe to the listeners, you can imagine there's the really white, dull office space, or you could think how fun, say, somewhere like Google is, right? It's about having a really great environment that fosters creativity and fosters like enthusiasm to all get this common goal done, right? And I think that people can be scared of the word business, but I think it's kind of that old notion that someone else does the business and I'm just this true artist who only focuses on the music or something. But I feel like when we shifted our perception and realized that if we wanted to really turn this into, because every musician, especially in the metal scene, has this dream that they want to. You ask them, what do you want to do? I want to travel around the world and play my music to lots of people and be essentially a professional heavy metal band. And when we toured in 2013, and I was 21 at the time with Ailstorm, that was the first time I kind of got to see into the inside workings of what one of these professional heavy metal bands actually look like. And there was just something about it where it flipped a switch in my mind and in the minds of my teammates at the time, that if we want to do what they're doing, that we're going to have to really lift our game, and there's going to need to be a whole nother level of sophistication to this thing. And I feel like as we've started to think about this as both a business and as our artistic endeavor over the years, if anything, it's made me feel more empowered about it, that it's about using your art to really have an impact on the world. Because so many people, all they do is they just create the music, but it doesn't really go anywhere for them. And I mean, the reason I want to make the music in Lagerstein, and why I'm sure all the other guys want to make the music in Lagerstein, is because we want to have an impact on people. And we want to share what we have to say together to the world, basically. And I think that if you don't address the elephant in the room, which is, how are we going to do this and what kind of systems need to be in place to actually achieve that, then you'll probably meet the fate of most other bands.
Are you the main driver behind a lot of this? Is there somebody in particular in the band that sort of not so much leads or whatnot, but just tries to, I guess, make sure that there's some sort of, I guess, coordination amongst everybody?
I don't know if you would call me the main driver. I'm very passionate and I'm a good orator, so I speak a lot to the band. But I think that really we're all driven in common by this vision that we've fostered together through a lot of just being together all the time and working and speaking about what we all want out of our lives. And that I think it's driven by that, really. But I guess you could say that the longer the people have been in the band, probably the more involved they are in realizing the full vision, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like myself and Nathan and Ryan, we're definitely, because we're the original guys now, and we have a lot of drive behind what the whole scope of Lagerstein is. But no, I think that everyone's really involved in that. Lagerstein, we're very open communication lines to each other, that we all know what is expected of everyone in the team to get this, because I believe that at least the kind of band I want to do doesn't involve having someone who's kind of dragging along a lot of other people to get there. I want to realize it and really enjoy the journey and enjoy doing it with the people that you're doing it with, because I mean, it's kind of a cheesy thing, but I guess the journey of being in a band is going to be the much longer part than if you ever make it or something like that. And that this is the joy.
Absolutely. You don't know what the end goal is going to be, or if there even is an end goal. In the end, it's it's what you do along the way, and when you look back, and see in hindsight to all the things that you've achieved along the way, and sometimes you're not in the moment to actually understand what's going on. So, a lot of things can pass you by very quickly. So if you can enjoy the ups and the downs along the way, then it just makes everything far more satisfying.
Certainly, and I think if you think about end goals, I imagine if I was to ask myself what my end goal was just a couple of years ago, I probably have reached those end goals, especially now that this trip is done. Like a goal that I had set personally for myself is I'd really wanted to play open air festivals in Europe. And now I've done that, right? And it's just, I think that always you're achieving your goals and wanting more goals and more goals. And I mean, I think for me, it really boils down to just wanting to have a positive impact on people and make something that makes people happy and that affects their lives in a positive way. That they can listen to this music and smile and laugh and feel like their worries fade away for a while they're at our show or while they're listening to our albums. And I think that goal is being realized more and more as this thing plays out.
Especially when you play live, because it's just an instantaneous thing where, especially when you're looking out and you're seeing reactions straight away. It's not a case where you can still get that feedback when you put music out there and you release music and you wait for people's responses when they listen to it. But that whole live element of performing and seeing people's reactions and responding to you as you're performing, and even just that immediate feedback after you finish playing as well is it's so intoxicating, and that's why so many people do it. That's why so many people bleed for it and go through hell to get that feeling. And that might only be 40 minutes or an hour or whatnot on stage, and go through the rest of the mud to get to that point.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's an amazing feeling playing live. And I feel like there's something that I really enjoy about our show, that it has this just ability to turn people's just happy faces on, essentially. Like, we played some festivals this year and just with some bands that were really, like, we did this one called Dark Troll in Germany that was just all black metal bands. And we definitely stuck out as the odd band in what was a really grim lineup. And yet, so many people came up to me after the show and they said, I really like black metal. I'm kind of into serious music. I don't do pirate metal, but you guys, I like that. I went crazy for that. Or we played at like a punk festival where we were the only metal band, and it was all these punk bands from the Czech Republic. And we were thinking, we're just so the odd band out here. What are they going to think? Yet they just went crazy with crowd surfs and stage dives, and just this huge energy just erupts as soon as the show begins. And I think that for something as particular as pirates, it seems to have this really universal appeal of just making people smile and want to dance and lose their preconception of what kind of, I'm this serious scene guy and I've got to have my arms folded or something, and I enjoy really serious things, and just go with the silliness of the moment and be a pirate for 40 minutes.
So those two examples of doing a predominantly black metal fest and then a punk one, you could almost look at them as experiments in a way, just to see how you guys can adapt to different crowds. But going away from both of those things, no doubt you guys probably already thought about it and could see that there was definitely crossover appeal. But I guess that was sort of validating and probably opening the eyes up to go, like we're far more versatile than what people may initially think of us as, because, for starters, we play in metal bands, and that's pretty niched. And in Europe, it's massive, but there's a lot of bands out there. But and then to really sort of niche that genre of metal as well, some people on the outside could go, well, you're really limiting yourself to who you play in front of and who's going to like you. But clearly, and I agree with what you're saying, the music that you guys do and your live performance, you can get anybody in front of you guys. I think you guys could do, you could support some R&B artist at a larger arena or something like that, and I think the whole crowd would just go mental, because it's so infectious and it's so high energy, and it's just so crowd. There's so much crowd interaction as well, which makes it just so, yeah, it's infectious, it's intoxicating. So, but was I guess going back, those two examples of those two festivals that you did, was it a bit of an eye opener for some of the guys in the band or all of you?
Yeah, I think so, especially this punk one. It was called Zalisa Festival, and it was literally like, it was 3 days of bands, and they were all Czech bands. We were the only international band and all punk bands, and nobody spoke English there. It was this really kind of maybe underground kind of punk scene of about 600 punks. And while we were waiting to play, because God knows why, gave us the headlining slot, and while we were waiting to play, we are just quite like anxious, thinking, what is this going to be like? And then as soon as you get up on stage and hit that first note, and it's like this wave of relief came over, but also realizing, of course, this was going to work, because I really think that like the pirate thing, it's more just a vehicle for what our real thing we do is just have fun and share fun with people. And the pirate thing is it's like the outer shell of it. Because I think it's like, there's a lot of pirate bands now, but I think, and I played with quite a few of them over here, but I think that a lot of them, they focus more on what I would think is kind of like, say, a cosplay-ish kind of element, or on a kind of historical narrative of singing about the mythology of what pirates were like in the 18th century or something. But I think what Lagerstein does, or what we try to do, is really sing about ourselves and about, we always say we're pirates of 2017. It's like there's no history happening, but it's just a crew of people who are trying to really live what it means to be a pirate rather than pretend to be what it was to be a pirate. Whereas I think to be a pirate is to live your own life and be free and really follow what your heart tells you is the right thing to do, and not be kind of chained down.
Is that a philosophy that you guys have always had since day dot, or is it something that's just sort of, it's evolved over time as you guys have done more and more shows and been together and you know, put out music and whatnot, that you started to see the possibilities, and so that philosophy sort of evolved into what you've just said now? Because that is incredible. It's so versatile, and it just transcends across so many different segments of people, and that's a perfect way of looking at it.
I think that maybe I couldn't have put it into such specific words a few years ago, but I can think back to the very first Lagerstein shows, and there was always the number one priority with them was to just share fun with them. Before we even decided that we were just pirates, before we were Vikings and pirates and all sorts of things at once, but always we had this vision that we wanted to play around the world, and even when we were completely unsophisticated and teenagers and just wasted, and to just share fun. And I think that the evolution of Lagerstein, to me, it feels like this just perfectly natural thing where the more I learn about what it means to stay in the game and continue to tour as a band, and to continue to have your bandmates with you, and also as I just kind of grow as an adult, I think the more clarity I get of what it is. But I think that it's the same type of driving thing the whole time since we started this band, and since even I first started playing in heavy metal bands, that it's always been a desire to not have a regular, I never wanted to settle for just a regular life of, I don't know, there's something of the idea of just getting a job and going for a career that it never felt, there was no question that was never what I was going to go for. I'm not sure why. Yeah. But this idea of just living your life as you want is something that we definitely talk about a lot, and that it's being the driving force behind all of our inspiration for doing Lagerstein, that we want to be a crew of pirates who just travel around the world and share fun.
Well, it probably
as true as you can, yeah.
And it probably helps you guys when you're going through. No doubt, you guys had a few rough moments in 7 months of being in Europe all together, and it would have been days or particular things or shows or whatnot where you guys probably, or you know, people in the band probably just going, "Oh my god, like what the fuck's going on?" But you know, just to have that, I guess that umbrella or that that philosophy that sort of sits over the band, and just that reminder of what you guys are doing and why you're doing it would just keep you guys fueled and strong to keep pushing through it all.
Yeah, I think you're right, because definitely in 7 months you have your ups and downs, and especially it's really exhausting. Like we set this kind of little challenge because we're a bit crazy that we said we didn't want to pay for any accommodation except for the house that we rented in Budapest, which we were at only for a tiny bit. So we essentially couch surfed the entire way around Europe and slept in the car when we didn't have somewhere to sleep. So, I mean, the exhaustion was kind of a big part of it, especially towards the end. And that can play funny tricks on your mind where you let something that isn't a big deal just become a big deal in your head or something. And I think that always we would just turn around and eventually you just laugh at it. And something we were saying a lot was, this is just a biography moment. When you're a big famous rock star and you're 50 years old and writing your biography, you'll be able to put this in it, that you had to wash your clothes in a bathtub, or that you had to sleep in the van in the middle of, I don't know, France or something, and that there's all these people just walking around beside you. And we use this kind of idea as a bit of a way to get some perspective on what's happening and say, like, there's a bigger picture here, and even if you're the most uncomfortable, the dirtiest you've ever been in your life, and you just want to sleep in a bed, this is actually amazing what we're doing, and it's hilarious, and it builds your character. You'll be able to tell people about this, that you stuck through it, and you focused on what actually mattered, which was showing up to those shows and putting on an incredible concert, and then meeting people and sharing who you are with them. And not letting the idea of not having the best sleep be the reason why that wasn't a good time.
It's, yeah, I tell you what, it takes a lot of strength and to get, I mean, I keep going back to just the size of the band and just having that many people. And I just know the challenges of having, a band of 4 guys and trying to make sure that, you keep everyone motivated and on the same page, and everybody's got, probably different little I'm trying to think of a really sort of polite word to use, but little quirks and things that everybody has. And the more time that you spend with people in confined spaces and together and whatnot, it's you're destined to have some tough times along the way. So to have that sort of perspective and just to try and, I guess, be there and support each other and retell those messages over and over again is such a big thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's also about having that respect for each other, that you say everyone gets to flip out a little bit. And it's okay if you flip out, because this is just ridiculous what we're doing. And it's like if someone's having a bad day, or they have to go sit off on their own or something, that you just respect their right to not feel good all the time, basically, if that makes sense. Like just give them some breathing room. If they're feeling like shit, then you say, man, that sucks. If there's anything we can do, come have a chat, come hang out, let's have a beer. If you want time by yourself, go chill out, and I'll cover for you if there's anything you need me to do for you today or something. And just letting, because I think you could create some more insanity by trying to just be super positive, happy, focused all the time or something. Because that's not how the human mind really is. We're always up here and then down there. So, yeah. I mean, for me, maybe other people would say it differently. But for me, it always has come back to just focusing on the grander picture of why I'm there. And not letting the little things get in the way of what we're trying to achieve, basically. Even if I don't feel good the whole way. But I mean, I don't feel good even when I'm sitting just at home just being comfortable. It isn't normal, I think, to feel good all the time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's you don't get any form of growth. You don't learn, and you don't experience new things if you're sitting around in a perceived comfortable state. If you're being challenged and you put in uncomfortable situations and whatnot, then they're the moments of growth, and they're the times that you look back on and go, oh, I'm so glad that happened, because without that happening, I would not have achieved this or experienced this or whatever it might have turned into. So it's it's an extremely important thing, and a lot of people, I guess, probably just don't have the or don't allow themselves the time to really sort of sit and think about that and understand that it's natural to go through some pretty challenging times, but you're better for it if you go through it.
Yeah, and maybe people don't get the opportunity to see that theory out in practice, because we all hear about it, that you've got to get out of your comfort zone to grow. But maybe if you never really put yourself out of your comfort zone and see just what the benefit is of doing that after you're through the ordeal, you don't believe that it's actually true. But like on that point, I would say that for me, the single most valuable thing of this whole trip would be just what I feel like has been the life experience I've gained from being a part of this team and pulling it off, basically. Like, I feel like if Lagerstein just blew up tomorrow or something and it was all swept away, I would still feel like this had been the most valuable thing I ever did. I think that for me, and I reckon that other guys would say a similar thing, is now that they're home, I'd be interested to hear what they think. But I feel like it's just helped me gain just more clarity of why I'm here on this earth and what I want to work and spend my energy on when I get back home to Australia. And that's been invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about, I've got like several things in my mind at the moment. I'm just trying to work out which one to start with, because
go for it.
You're ringing absolutely true in my head as far as I guess it's. I mean, you come from a self-development point of view when you talk about those sort of things, and so many people just don't get the chance to experience anything like that. They're stuck in an office, or they're stuck, at home, or just doing a 9-to-5 sort of existence, and to be able to go. I mean, traveling is such a growth thing in general. So when people get the chance to travel overseas, your mind opens up and you do so many amazing things. But, to be able to go overseas and do it in such, I mean, really, when you're looking at a grander picture, you're in such an odd social situation. You're in such an odd human situation where you're in a band of people that are doing something that's out of the ordinary. It's different to the normal, the social norm. And you guys are challenged in a way that you have to think outside the box. You have to think creatively, and it's a problem-solving exercise in a foreign land, in foreign countries, multiple countries over a long period of time. So it's not just a case of going away and visiting another part of the world and experiencing a bit of culture and a bit of perspective that way. You guys are done that, but the next level up. So as you said, like, if everything implodes and the band's no more, the amount of growth and learnings and whatnot that you guys no doubt would have got over that period of time would just be absolutely invaluable.
Yeah, and I think that it's just really universal, that can be applied to anything. Like, the more I find that, say, like the building of a band and trying to get it to be big, I think that there's a lot of similarities between trying to build anything. That if you want to be, say, in the creative fields, if you want to be like a visual artist or something, but even if you want to make any kind of, I don't know, I was going to say the word company or project, or if you want to have anything that has an impact on the world, I think that a lot of it comes down to just how well you can communicate with people and how well you can stick to your vision of what it is you want to achieve, even when you feel like it's shit, or when you feel like it's not going to happen, or you don't feel like doing it, and how well you can just play out that long game. And like you said, it's a problem-solving exercise. Like, we are always really solution-driven. Instead of when something goes wrong and you didn't prepare enough, or you couldn't prepare for this, and I think it's easy to get boggled down emotionally and go, oh, this sucks that this happened, and really letting that get in the way of your thinking. But for me, I just skip that whole stage and just ask, this is the problem we have. What are our options? Like, what kind of ways can we solve this? We could do this, or we could do that, and let's just choose one and then give that 100%. And I mean, that's probably the philosophy training in me that makes me think that way. But I find that it really makes the whole ordeal a lot less stressful, because you just go and do your thing and you stick to your plan. And then when something comes up, you just ask yourself, okay, what is the most appropriate course of action given the new situation?
Where did you? Oh, pardon me. Where did you get a lot of that that mindset from? You know, did you have influences along the way before getting into the whole music world that sort of has steered you in a particular direction, or has it been since becoming a musician and playing that you've started to build sort of these philosophies that you work along? Because, you know, the mindset that you're sort of articulating to me is one that's it's a pretty strong mindset, and something that is from a growth point of view, where you really sort of, not so much, you know, as you said before, it's not about thinking positive all the time. It's just about sort of sitting back and looking at the bigger picture, and then understanding, you know, from a process point of view, what do we need to do to move forward, but not getting bogged down in too much of the emotion side of it.
Yeah, but not to deny your emotions. To deny emotions is to make yourself sick, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
But to answer your question, I think that it's come from a few areas. Like, first, I'd say maybe my father had always, from a young age, pushed me to try and do something excellent. To say, I don't know, he always just said, Joel, you're going to have an impact, or work to have an impact on the world. And then going and doing my degree in philosophy, I think what I took away, because that's another quite particular area of study, but I think the thing I took away from that the most is to learn to listen to the wisdom you can learn from other people, and to actually take interest in what other people have said matters in the world, and open yourself up to that. And when you talk about like self-growth, it became for me a really natural thing, going from, because I was about halfway through my studies when I went and did that Ailstorm tour, and then realized that this area of entrepreneurship and of business is something that I'm going to need to put my attention on if I want to succeed in my overarching goal of being a successful musician. And I kind of took that full approach of reading dead philosophers and going and studying, say, other successful businesses, and also people who teach you about growth. Say, someone that I really love listening to is Tony Robbins, if you know Tony Robbins.
Yep.
Who's like the bread and butter of life coaching, basically. And he was the first guy that I got into. And then it just opened up this whole world for me of, I think, of listening to, this is something that is a core tenet of Joel Orford, is to really listen to what other wise people have been saying about what's going to make you happy in the world, and what ways are there to have success. Like, a lot of successful people, I think, talk about success as boiling down to a lot of similar things, even if it's across many different fields. It's like if you study people who are, say, professional athletes, or people who are musicians or have had some success in the corporate world or something, and they all say that it's about kind of having an indomitable spirit and working, just not worrying about what's happening around you, and just keeping to your goal and working smart and ticking it off, and not letting yourself get bogged down on the little defeats or the little victories, and just keep one step at a time moving forward. And I don't know, it's also sometimes I think, what is it why am I so hell-bent on doing what I do? And I'm not even necessarily sure sometimes where it comes from. I just know that I want to have an impact on the world for the better. And I want to help people. And doing this music is one part of that. And it just gets me out of bed, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. I think from a personal point of view, I should say, and trying to connect with people, and then understanding yourself by interacting with others and learning how to be a better person and be strong, and to think from different angles, and to have that growth sort of perspective and whatnot, just to continue to develop and progress and move forward, where a lot of people, I guess, have certain milestones in life from a social norm point of view. And once they hit those milestones, then they start to slow down, and they're not looking for those new opportunities to push themselves. So, I think, how old are you now?
I'm 26 now.
Okay, 26. So, and you've done a fair bit in that space of time. And really, you could look at this you could look at it from a number of different ways, but you could look at this as chapters. And really, the band side of it could be one chapter in this long book of continued growth and, looking to better yourself and find all these new experiences and ways just to understand more of, I guess, not so much who you are, but I guess just how to be the best person that you possibly can be.
Yeah, and what you have to give to the world, because I think we get given so much from being born. Just we get given being alive, and then we come into these really lucky countries, especially Australia, where we have such a stable society. Then it has so much of the kind of collective work of a lot of people over a lot of years to build into something that is a ground for a lot of opportunity. And I think that if you kind of practice some gratitude and reflect on how much it's already gunning to your advantage, that can really inspire you to think, what can I make of that? Because I've been given so much by just fate, essentially, to have been born where I was at this time. And I like to think, though, because it can be easy to think that a lot of people, why aren't they looking at themselves like this? Or why are people so caught up in the patterns of their existence? But I think that it's a challenge of society, I think, as we go into this really, I don't know, there's a strange thing happening with technology and with the just acceleration of everything. And especially they say that we're about to lose a lot of our really basic jobs to robots and to AI. And I think that it's going to be a challenge of society to work out how can we go from creating a system that makes people really efficient at being kind of just manual workers, essentially, and fitting in this box. So how can we educate people to feel really creative about themselves and ask themselves, what can I do instead of what is there possible that I could achieve, rather than where can I go and fit into this kind of line, I guess.
Well, it's this could be a really deep topic, because it's one that I talk about quite a bit, and I'm becoming or finding a real sort of passion about this, because it's really, really interesting to see what will happen in the years to come. But I really think that you nailed it on the head. I think people are going to have to get to a point, or will be forced to get to a point where they're going to have to think about, what do I do that's fulfilling in my life? And it's more of a case of transitioning from doing things because I have to in order to survive, which is, going to a job and doing, whether it be labor or a low skilled job or whatever it might be, or it doesn't necessarily even have to be a low skilled job. It's just, job reliability and having a career and whatnot, and being with the same employer for decades, for your entire working life, is just it's not a real thing anymore. And I think a lot of people are going to find themselves out of work and less opportunities in the traditional sense, and then being forced to have to think, what's more important to me? What's the most important things to me? Because who knows, the financial side of things might not be a factor anymore in the years to come. You might not have to really sort of bust your gut and do something that you don't like. But then people are sort of left with idle time, and then sort of working out, well, what's the most important thing? And that could be a real crisis for a lot of people, because they're not wired for that initially, and will have to be shown a way of looking at life from a different angle.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, this is kind of, I think, what we're all gunning for a little bit, is this universal social income. And I really can imagine that is what it's going to be like, because why would you work if there's, I don't know, it's like the jobs that most people in society are doing are kind of, they're just resource generating jobs in some degree. And if we're able to kind of automate that whole process, our education system, it doesn't feel like it's necessarily designed to answer that question of like, what should you do with yourself if you don't need to actually work for a living or something like that. It's a really complex one, and I think that the world's kind of messy, so I think that a lot of people will probably find themselves a bit lost in that idea. I think if they sat and pondered, like, what would I do with myself if I didn't have to work for a living or something? Like, and they'd say, I'm not sure, because their work is kind of the meaning of their life. For me, it's an interest in, I think it's towards the children is where I would really want to work, is how can you just foster this sense of creativity in the young people who are kind of growing up. And I mean, maybe the realm of the internet necessarily does that, because you're suddenly just exposed to so many thousands of ideas that I don't know, it's like the internet is just a world of knowledge, and that you can just search through it at your own leisure, compared to at school where you're just being given what is designated for you, essentially.
Absolutely. There's a set plan of content that you're given, and that's all you know, and that's probably why we've had so many challenges in recent years of society progressing in different directions and different generations of people without sort of sweeping in a general way across entire generations. But for people that have gone through structured schooling systems and older systems, have really struggled with getting outside that comfort zone and discovering that there's different ways of living and different ways of looking at life and whatnot, and that'll be an ongoing struggle until systems of education and whatnot change. And there are more progressive ways of schooling children and providing different educational resources and whatnot. And I think we're slowly going in the right direction, but there's a very old system that's still well and truly in place, and it'll take a long time for that to change. But it's going to be an interesting thing, and the internet's an amazing thing. And I think we're still at the birthing stage of the internet, and it's so new, and for humanity, and what it's done so far has just been absolutely, it's just been jaw-dropping what it's done to society and to our race, as humans. It's just suddenly the world's been opened up and we've never been more connected. And so where that leads us is there's just an infinite amount of possibilities of where we will go as a species. But I think it's just there's going to be a transitional or continuous transitional periods, I guess. Well, there always has been over time, but I think over the next sort of couple of decades, there's going to be some real friction and some real turmoil with people as society begins to change, and exponentially with technology and people's ideas. I think some people will really struggle, and hopefully there'll be enough people out there that will see opportunities from an entrepreneurial point of view and look and go, what, there's an opportunity here to provide support for others in a number of different ways. And there's already things like that out there where, there's a lot of self-development out there and coaching and whatnot, where you're teaching people new ways of thinking. And I think the more of that's out there, the better equipped a lot of people are going to be when these changes become more prevalent and more sort of in their face.
Yeah, and I think that it's not just the internet opening access to kind of maybe inspirational tools, but I think there's a general education revolution happening, that there's all of this now, say the free universities that are on the internet, and access to all sorts of free courses for teaching yourself pretty much anything. And I can really see that being the way, because, I mean, now I think a lot of people are kind of fed up with what is kind of like the corporate nature of, say, university education, and going and having to invest so much of your money into what is ultimately a really specialized skill. And now the internet is starting to see, like, I'm not sure if you've dug around much of, like, I think it's called Open University, has so many courses on, it's great, on pretty much, well, any topic that you would actually study at university. that you can do from your home. And I mean, a weakness I can see of it, because it's quite young, is that you don't necessarily have that community around you. But I can imagine that is where it's all going to go, is that people are going to, instead of having such specialized educations for a really specialized role, I think we'll have more generalized educations. And I can also imagine what's being happening with universities now to perhaps happen with younger children and schooling in general, that the education will be taken on board in a much more general role and given less to others. Because, I mean, it feels like, and I don't have any children of my own, so I don't wish to put words in the mouth of other people, but I do teach, and I've taught quite a lot of kids. And I think that people can really sometimes hand over the education of their children to others because they would deem them experts in that matter or something. And I think that it's really, how do you say it, that we're going to come back to kind of having the whole community work on them, but that community will now be the whole world community of everything that's available. And to have a more rounded education, because that way you can, it's like, I think the purpose of educating people should be to give them a base so they can find out for themselves what it is they want to do and what it is they want to give back to the world. And to just give them the tools to basically answer that question for themselves, rather than to give a really specific vocational education for this job.
That's it.
Because then, like we're saying, when that job disappears to robots, you're left with this existential crisis because you're never given the skills to actually ask yourself on the inside, what am I here to give?
That's it. Yeah, you're teaching behaviors to people, and you're teaching emotional intelligence and whatnot, rather than just getting people to memorize facts and figures, or something, as you said, that's very specialized and might earn you a lot of money in the short term. But as opportunities change, and you might be out of that, there might not be an opportunity in that specialized role anymore, and then you've got nothing else to provide, or at least you feel that way. So if you can get children as they enter whatever this educational system may look like, to be taught the behaviors around just how to, or even just to encourage people to love to learn, get them thinking the right way of learning is actually a really exciting thing, and learning the philosophy and the principles around just actually seeking information. And that alone is such a powerful thing, rather than just forcing people to open up a book or read what's on a board and just take it in, and just out of fear that you have to get everything right for an exam, or when the teacher asks you a question in the class. It's just, you want to give people excitement. You want to give people an incentive that it's a fantastic thing to learn as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I mean, right now it's just so focused on just basically filling out the boxes, right? You want to learn what's on the exam and mimic how it's meant to be so that you can give the appearance of knowing. Because it's like, if you do well on the exam, it doesn't really matter how well you know what you are meant to know. Really, the skill that you're trying to get good at is to do well on that exam. And I think that happiness comes from, it's something more generalized than that. And maybe that's what the focus of education should be on, teaching people how to be happy. I think it's definitely a question that I don't remember ever addressing when I was going through school, of like, what does it really mean to be happy? A lot of lessons on very specific things, on how to do this math or this history figure or something like this, but not questions on really, I don't know, just that, how to be happy. Always, it's very vocational.
Absolutely.
But I guess this is what the world is like at the moment, and especially institutions move very slowly. And education, because it's about children, and because children are the product of older people, they're going to be that system's necessarily going to be rooted in something older than what the youth who see, because the youth don't have the children.
Yeah, that's right, definitely. So apart from, I'm really fascinated by, I guess, your background and I guess your outlook on everything and what you've studied and whatnot. So with the band, and obviously coming home shortly back to Australia, and going into next year as well. I mean, or even into the future. You've got the band, and there's obviously there's this a group of you guys that are all moving towards a goal or goals that you have, and you're doing really well, and you've achieved so much. But for you personally, I mean, what do you see yourself as being sort of a part of a band and always being in this band, and that's going to be your main sort of focus? Or do you have ideas and do you have visions of doing things in other directions and on the side, or other things being your main focus? Like, where do you see yourself going in the future, or even just going into next year? What's the plan for yourself personally?
Well, definitely the band is a huge focus of mine, that I want to keep just going up and onward with it and doing what's natural. But I'd say, like, and this is a goal that a few of us share, that what my end goal is just freedom of money and freedom of time. I want to be able to create a life where I can basically be anywhere in the world and still run it to the same degree of effectiveness. And certainly I'm interested in starting some other projects. Like, for now, I'm really looking forward to getting back to teaching when I get home. And I'm working on a course for teaching kind of, I guess that's why I'm so inspired by it, is teaching kind of like some philosophy skills to children. And so that's going to be a big thing that I'm going to dig into next year, is starting up a little bit of a philosophy school, which will be my first thing doing outside of music. Mm. But I think that I want to just keep expanding. I want to just keep, the vision of Lagerstein is to share art that makes people happy. And I want to go do that in other areas of society. And in working with children is something I'm incredibly passionate about. And I get on with them really well. And I think that it's an area where I have something really to give. So I'd say that's where I'm going to go focus a lot of my other energy next year, is on teaching and on just helping inspire people to do the search for happiness. I mean, and then I have some other dumb skills that I like to practice. Like, I'd like to juggle. So I'll probably go practice some juggling, because I haven't done that all year.
That's cool.
Yeah, but also, I mean, next year is writing the new album. That's something I'm really looking forward to doing. It's just, maybe this year has been incredibly, what do they say? It's the right-hand side of the brain focuses on the problem solving and pulling off this goal. And next year I'm looking forward to sitting back and getting into my artistic boots and making some music. But certainly it wouldn't be true if I said the only thing I want to do is Lagerstein. But Lagerstein is completely a part of me, and I want to take this thing as far as it can possibly go. And the thing that makes me want to express Lagerstein, this desire to make people happy and to help people, and I want to basically bleed that over into other aspects, because I find that the more of my time that I dedicate to others, the better I feel. And that's just something I've learned about myself, that the less I focus on myself and the more I focus on helping others, the happier I get. So I want to go and dedicate as much of my time next year as I can capture to doing things for other people.
It's a pretty simple concept, isn't it? But a lot of people struggle to not to understand it, but just to really sort of stop in their tracks and really spend some time to think about it actually, and ponder on it and be in the moment to give themselves a chance to really understand what that concept means. But it's just so simple in theory, but I guess sometimes it's also hard to practice as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's really hard to practice. I mean, in the sense that you can get swept up in what does it mean to help people by needing to do something really grand. And perhaps it's actually just kind words of encouragement, or to help yourself by looking at what am I doing to harm people? And by stopping doing that in its own way is helping people. But I mean, and that comes back to a lot of this question of working on yourself, that the more you work on yourself, the more you're able to work on the world around you. And it all to me feels like all of this thing, Lagerstein, myself, my philosophical interests, they all feel very connected, that it's part of this one thing that I'm doing. That because I mean, when you write it down on paper, it seems kind of strange that that this pirate metal band could have this kind of inspiration for me. But it feels just so natural because the thing that is the pirate metal band has come from this source. And I mean, these ideas are something that I feel like I've grown into with my bandmates, and that we have spent countless hours talking about and listening to other people talk and just being inspired together and questioning each other of what does success mean to you? Is it that you just want to be really rich and just consume a lot of material goods or something? Is this the end goal? And I've just come to realize that that just can't be the end goal. It's like it has nothing to do with material wealth, but just with, it's like a wealth of heart, essentially. That's the project that I'm working on.
Well, I tell you what, it's a pretty interesting story so far, and it sounds like it's only just getting started. So it's there's a lot to come, and I mean, just personally for me, because a lot of the things that I guess you've spoken about in this chat, and just the way that you look at the world and at yourself and where you want to go and what you want to do, just really sort of rings true with a lot of stuff that I guess I approach things with, in the way that I look at life as well. So it's nice to hear somebody else doing it, and especially in the realm that I guess we share a little bit of common ground with, just being musicians playing in a metal band and doing shows and doing albums and doing all that stuff, and stereotypically in that world of what people may perceive that world to be. And it's really, really cool to see people really sort of pushing themselves to just be the best that they possibly can, and willing to just be creative and think outside the box as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, I think I can even see this podcast for you as being an expression of that, because it's like it seems so natural to come from the band, because to do an interview like this it's similar to the kinds of chats you have 100 times with other people in the scene. It's just not on record, basically. And these kinds of talking with other people who are creatively driven and who want to achieve, that's kind of, it helps fuel you to learn from them and to learn from other perspectives, and also to turn the lens back on yourself and ask, what am I working towards? And I think that it would be an exciting thing to do a podcast like this and be able to talk to so many people and ask them what kind of makes them tick and have conversations like that. I think that would give some invaluable knowledge back to yourself about what makes me tick. I don't know. I think it would be exciting.
It's I can't put into words what it has done over the last couple of years for me personally, because it's just been so many moments of change and growth and whatnot. But and on varying sides, like, positive and negative. Sometimes it's all positive in hindsight, but positive and negative, where sometimes you look at people and go, oh my God, like, I feel like I'm doing nothing in comparison to this person. You feel really down on yourself. But in hindsight, you go back and you realize that, this is all inspiration. This is all fuel to keep you moving. But it's also a great way of just getting some perspective and understanding that everyone that you speak to, and it's not even just the podcast, as you said, it's a great way of putting something on record. It's forcing people to have to actually sit down for a period of time and actually have a conversation without distractions coming in. So you really sort of get into a bit more of a deeper conversation. But I think the big thing that I've learnt from this, and I'm hoping that the people that listen to this as well, is that everybody's got their own journey, everyone's got their own story, and everyone goes at their own pace, and we can all do better, but whether we need to is another story, and it's up to us as to what works for us in our unique circumstances. And in the end, as you said, with teaching kids in school, you got to work out what makes you happy, and if that's the most important thing. And if you can work out what makes you happy, then you've won. And it's just about being the best that you possibly can, and just focusing on your own journey and getting inspiration from other people, but not having that bog you down as well.
Definitely, because I mean, it's kind of like looking at the guy on YouTube who just shreds on guitar 1,000 times faster than you could ever do. And I mean, you can take away from that video in two ways, and you go like, oh, I'm so bad at guitar that I'm never going to play again, or say, oh, it's amazing that that's possible. What could be possible for me? I think that there is there in all sorts of interactions with people. It's important to be inspired by people instead of give way to envy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of food for thought, I think, for everybody listening, because there's just, yeah, I mean, it's something that it's so easy to get sucked into, and there's a lot of sort of autopilot moments that we go into on a day-to-day basis where we find ourselves, unconsciously comparing ourselves to other people and situations and whatnot, and it's very hard to sort of be present enough to be able to understand that you need to look at it from another angle. And it's not just about thinking positive or anything like that. It's just understanding that, you're on your own path and your own journey, and find the opportunity. And if it's a great idea where in that scenario that you just mentioned that, it's something just to show and give you a sign that you could potentially get to that level, or it might just mean that, that's something that you really appreciate, but you're doing your thing, and that's all it is. And that's all you need to worry about. So, yeah, I didn't expect our conversation to go as deep as it did, but I'm quite happy that it did. I'm really sort of it's refreshing to talk to somebody that's thinking the way that you are.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's something that I'm a bit obsessive about, so I think it's my pleasure to always have someone to talk to about, I don't know, whatever comes to mind. I think it was a really natural conversation, and that I learn a lot by just being able to bounce my own thoughts with other people, and delve into some topics that maybe don't normally rise over dinner time conversation.
Oh, yeah.
But that
sure.
maybe we all are thinking about a lot, or perhaps not as explicitly as we spoke about here, but there's some very generalized questions under there, like what is the purpose of acting? What should I do with myself? And I mean, these are questions that everyone wants to know the answer to. And yeah, no, it was fun. I thank you for the good questions.
No worries at all. So, getting back at the end of the month, the tour is going to kick off first weekend of December, and it's about 8 or so days. How many dates are you guys doing?
So we've got 5 shows, Brisbane, Canberra, Sydney, Melbourne, and then a Melbourne acoustic show, which will be the first time we took down the acoustic gig to outside of Brisbane, actually.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, it's kind of a quite concise tour. But to anyone listening, if you haven't heard Lagerstein, it will be a party. So come and dance your ass off.
Yeah, I've been to a few of your shows, and I can definitely say with confidence that it's probably one of the better live shows out there, and it's probably one of the more unique ones, really, because you guys are just full on, and it's just something where, as you said before earlier in the conversation, where you have certain people, from a crowd point of view, and some of the more serious metal bands where you'll have a crowd that stands there with their arms folded, and it's just, I think, if anything, it's a real challenge to be able to stand there with your arms folded for an entire Lagerstein set. So, yeah, if anybody is in the area, they should definitely go out and check you guys out.
Yeah, I think if you stand too still, you'll probably catch the eye of one of us and have them come run and jump and grab your hand. That's definitely happened before.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to put links on the website, and I'll direct everyone to where they can check out you guys and what you're doing, and pick up all the music, and obviously find out all the details for the tour if you guys are playing nearby. But yeah, thank you, and enjoy the rest of the time in Switzerland. Enjoy Manowar, hail and kill. And,
I will. Hail and kill.
And safe trip back as well. Man.
Well, yeah, thank you very much, Andy, for having me on the podcast. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to catching up sometime when we're back in Australia.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a great evening.
You too.
See ya.
Bye. Thanks, folks. If you want to reach out to Joel or check out Lagerstein, or maybe go to one of the shows in Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne in December, you can go to the show notes over at andysocial.net, click on the show notes and everything's there. Otherwise, you go search for Lagerstein on all the usual social media channels. Pretty easy to find, and they're pretty good on social media, so please do so. Okay, guys, before I wrap this up, a couple of quick things. We are coming towards the end of 2017. A lot of things in the pipeline for 2018. I've got a couple of things to reveal before we wrap up the year, and I will leave that for the next couple of episodes in the coming weeks to, I guess, dive into that in a little bit more detail. But a few, I wouldn't say changes, but a few different tactics that I'm going to take coming out of 2017 and into 2018, which I'll get to at a later date. But lots of cool things, lots of exciting things. As mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I have either launched my new podcast, Self-Starter, or I'm about to launch it. Either way, it's there, and I really encourage you guys, if you're interested in small business, self-employment, freelancing, to go and give that a shot. It's going to be a little bit clunky to begin with, as this podcast has been and continues to be at times, but it will hopefully be a great value add for you guys that listen and have an interest in diving into that world, or are already in that world and want some reassurance or some extra information, or anything that will help you on your journey in self-employment. So that's all there, selfstarter.com.au. Now, before we wrap it up, once again, if you want to support the podcast, sharing social media things, liking, retweeting, hearts, comments, tags, all that stuff goes a long way for the podcast. If you want to shout me a beer, the best way to do so, if you can't track me down in person, is to go over to andysocial.net, click on Shout Me a Beer, and it takes you to my paypal.me account where you can throw me 50 cents or, how much does a beer cost these days? Depends on where in the world you are and how big that beer is. But, by all means, shout me a small beer, a large beer, or a brewery, or shout me, the froth off the top of the beer. So whatever you are inclined to, I will greatly appreciate it. There's also the Amazon portal link. So if you shop on Amazon, I would highly encourage you to use the andysocial.net portal link and then go to Amazon, where I get a small cut of what you purchase. That would help this podcast immensely. So thank you so much to people that do use the paypal.me and also the Amazon portal link as well. It definitely helps me with some of these little costs here and there each month, and launching a new podcast as well. Oh, there's a lot of costs there. So it's good to get little bits and pieces from people every once in a while. So thank you so much to those that do support. And thank you so much for you guys that just listen every week. It's, as I always say, that alone is the support that I need. And to get feedback from you guys and to see you guys listening to the episodes, that's all I want, and that's the best thing that I get from this podcast. So thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. It means a lot. Some really cool episodes coming up, a few little announcements to make as well, but we'll get there in the coming weeks. Until then, and until next week, thanks so much, guys.